Hello and welcome to today's Spigit webinar, Exploring Innovation and Employee Engagement, Insights from Spigit's third annual innovation study. Today's presentation will be given by Virginia Lee Williams, Vice President at Spigit. Before we get started, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping items first. First off, I'd like to check that the audio is working properly for everyone. So can you please type something in the chat box to confirm that you can hear me? Great, thank you very much. Today's webinar is being recorded. You will receive an email containing both the link to the recording and the slide deck in a day or so for you to rewatch or share with a colleague. Finally, we will end today's presentation with a Q&A session. Please enter your questions in the chat box during the webinar, and we'll address them at the end of Virginia's presentation. So without any additional delay, I'd like to introduce today's host, Kim Turner, Vice President of Product Marketing here at Spigit.
Thank you, Ian. If you can go to the next slide. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's discussion. I'm Kim Turner, and I'm delighted to be hosting my colleague, Virginia Lee Williams. Today, Virginia will be revealing results from our third annual Crowdsource Innovation Report, revealing how companies approach building a culture of innovation and engaging employees to meet their critical strategic goals. You'll find especially interesting the insights about how companies can drive better business outcomes when employee engagement and innovation efforts work in tandem, whether your focus is on digital transformation, improving customer experience, or new product development. As the provider of the idea management solution that support client efforts in these areas, it's always exciting for us to see the insights that come through as we do our annual study. A little bit about us. Spigit enables organizations to leverage and engage employees, partners, suppliers, and customers to create and manage a pipeline of ideas. These ideas translate into initiatives that drive employee engagement and enable business leaders to find the best ideas and foster a culture of innovation. Spigit is the largest provider of idea management solutions, serving some of the world's foremost and recognizable organizations. And as such, we've launched more than 14,000 challenges across many industries and geographies. What's exciting about this is how it translates not only into a level of expertise that's highly valued by our customers, but it also gives us an opportunity to study a wide variety of programs and share insights like Virginia is ready to share today. So on that note, and without further ado, I will turn it over to Virginia.
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to hear more about what we believe is a really important and timely topic. The intersection between innovation and employee engagement is one that we're hearing about more and more from clients like the ones Kim was sharing with you, as well as others. I'm excited to briefly share our findings with you today, and I also hope we'll have the opportunity to talk with many of you more deeply in future conversations or meetings. Our insights are particularly timely as we look at the findings from the Conference Board 2018 C-Suite Challenge. The findings result from a survey of over 1,000 business leaders about the top challenges facing their organizations this year and their strategies for meeting those challenges. The top two hot button issues they said require special focus this year are related to talent and disruptive technology. And this really punctuates the importance of this intersection between innovation and employee engagement. Now let's look at the strategies they're deploying. We see three top strategies: culture of innovation, promote idea sharing, and raise employee engagement. And when you look at the strategy of creating a culture of innovation, we know that it's an important one, and we also know that it translates to business results. We know this from our experience with our clients, as well as research that we've conducted. We recently undertook a data study across 6.5 million people and 100,000 winning ideas to illuminate the practice of innovation in the enterprise. In this study, conducted by Kellogg School of Business, we analyzed every potential measure our platform includes. And what we learned from our analysis of all this data is that innovation is indeed a science. And surprisingly, the variables that make for a successful innovation program are independent of whether the company is seeking disruptive or incremental innovations. And it doesn't matter whether they're asking for process or product innovation, what industry the company is in, or even for the most part, whether the company is large or small. The key variable we identified across all of the companies in our analysis is the ideation rate. Now, we define the ideation rate as the number of ideas approved by management divided by the total number of active users in the platform. Higher ideation rates are correlated with growth and net income. Now, this is most likely because companies with an innovation culture not only generate better ideas, but they are also better organized and managed to act upon them. We at Spigit have a strong point of view about the importance of an innovation culture. Remember, that number one strategy that executives are looking at, and how that ties to business results. Given these C-suite hot button issues and the related strategies to address them, the insights from our recently released 2018 State of Crowdsourced Innovation Report could not be more timely. Let's talk about why. In our study, a culture of innovation and employee engagement are the most frequently cited objectives for organizations when starting a crowdsourcing program with Spigit. Now, culture is defined in many ways, of course, but it really comes down to how employees behave. And if employees feel valued, engaged, rewarded, and listened to, which is the often reported result of crowdsourcing programs, then innovation can flourish. However, the culture will not change if this environment exists for just a fraction of employees or business units. To create this environment, your ideation program must be scaled. It needs to become woven into the very fabric of your organization. As I previously noted, most companies cite culture change as their biggest goal when starting a crowdsourced ideation program. Now, we found that in order to drive culture, you have to scale. And now there are a number of different dimensions to scaling program, as you see here. The frequency of challenges or ideation campaigns, your engagement of employees, the reach or distribution across the organization, and finally, the diversity of participation is another key aspect of scale. We know that if you include employees whose roles may not be connected directly to the business need you have, that you will further kickstart culture change and gain valuable input from voices that might otherwise have gone unheard. I've personally heard a number of inspiring and impactful stories from our clients on this front. All right, let's take a deeper look at these 4 factors of cultural scale. One factor of scale is the frequency with which you engage your employees. What we learned in our 2018 State of Crowdsourced Innovation Report is that more established crowdsourcing programs run more challenges. On average, companies reported executing about 11 crowdsourcing challenges or projects each year. And then programs that had been around for more than 3 years ran an average of 14 or 15, while younger programs ran about 10. We also see that there is some variation by industry, as noted here. But it's really about engaging employees frequently to help them solve a particular business problem or business opportunity. Now, we're also seeing an intention to increase the number of challenges. When we asked about growth, maintenance, or decline of certain crowdsourcing activities, a strong majority of program managers indicated that challenge or ideation campaign activities either grew or stayed level. 47% of program managers saw the number of internal challenges increase over the past year, and that was regardless of program longevity. This demonstrates there is a continued interest in program growth and internal demand for challenges. As I previously noted, to create a culture of innovation, you have to scale your program. And to do that, we are seeing organizations starting to engage employees company-wide and not just in a few select groups. So it's also about distribution. 42% of newer crowdsourcing programs have already been deployed company-wide, some right off the bat, and then some over a course of a couple of years. And only about 1 in 10 are operating in a single business unit. Now, more established programs successfully push further out into the organizations, but none of them report being in a single business unit, and just a small 6% are operating in a couple of departments. For programs that have been running for more than 3 years, nearly 70% of them are running company-wide. If you're going to change culture, this is exactly what you need to do. There's no quicker way to deliver a message of culture change than by inviting all or nearly all employees to engage in an initial challenge that, importantly, will address an area of strategic importance to your business. This breadth and depth will improve your outcomes. All right, our third factor in scale and fostering a culture of innovation is engagement and the level of active participation in the program over time. Active participation is not only those who are submitting ideas, but those who are refining those ideas by commenting, rating, prioritizing them, etc. If you're going to change the culture, a way to do that is to get, as we've said, everyone engaged. And we are certainly seeing that across our customer base as depicted here. 60% of programs that have been around for more than 3 years report an increase in the number of active participants over the last 12 months. For younger programs, as you can see, those less than 3 years, 44% report an increase in active participants. The bottom line is the key is to get the program rolling, and over time, you will see more and more active participation. Finally, there's diversity. And this is one of my favorites. It's another reason why we need to engage broad groups of employees in the process, is because we need to be inclusive and we need to increase diversity. Simply put, diversity begets better ideas. It impacts not only the cultural change that you're looking for, but it also impacts the nature of the very ideas themselves. Greater value is unlocked when you look beyond the expected crowd, those closest to or most directly impacted by the problem you're trying to solve, and embrace diverse populations across the enterprise. Of the program managers who track it, 31% told us that ideas selected for action were submitted by someone outside the group or business unit sponsoring the challenge. This is so well exhibited by a manufacturing client of ours who needed to find ways to better serve their airline customers. And among the problems that surfaced was a difficulty of inspecting a particular aircraft part overnight. The inspection process took 8 hours. The airlines, of course, found this frustrating because, as we all know, planes sometimes land late and need to take off early. So the service techs on the ground knew that the problem wasn't actually the inspection. It was the process of threading a camera inside the aircraft part to inspect it. That part took 7 hours and the inspection took 1. So the company launched a challenge and decided to engage employees to address the problem. And they chose to deploy the challenge to all employees and not just to the expected crowd, those who were closest to or most directly impacted by the problem, the ones you might assume would have the most knowledge to fix it. Well, lo and behold, an administrative assistant at the company who was familiar with the airline's complaints responded to the challenge. She had recently seen the Tom Cruise movie Minority Report. She posted an idea suggesting that they send a robotic spider into the part like the one she had seen in the movie. And as you can imagine, a lot of people reviewing her suggestion found it silly. However, the company's chief technology officer didn't. He was intrigued. So he tried putting a miniature camera on a remote control set of robotic legs and walking it into the part, and it worked. So the administrative assistant's winning idea was put into a standard practice, and as a result, the aircraft engine inspections take 85% less time compared to the old method, and of course the airlines are a lot happier. It's also important to note in this specific example that 65% of the ideas for this technical challenge came from employees in departments outside of the one sponsoring the challenge. So the old adage really is true. Sometimes it just takes a new set of eyes. Right, we've discussed the 4 elements and the 4 dimensions of scale: frequency of challenges, level of employee engagement, the distribution of program challenges across the organization, and the diversity of participants. We'll talk briefly now about what our clients are telling us they're measuring. The number one thing our clients are measuring in these programs is employee engagement. Metrics relating to engagement and collaboration include the number of challenges run, the size of the invited audience, active participants, total ideas submitted, numbers of votes, comments from the crowd, etc. These are all excellent data points to demonstrate success-linked culture change and employee engagement. 81% of respondents tell us they are measuring employee engagement as a result of these programs. Now that's the good news. Project or challenge sponsors are emerging from all parts of the enterprise, as you can see here. Spigit customers identified 18 different departments that sponsored ideation challenges in communities. Now, similar to our findings last year, groups in innovation, operations, and technology are most frequently identified as sponsoring groups. But as this chart shows, almost all business units or groups have sponsored a project at one point. However, we see a gap and therefore opportunity. If you think back to the 2 C-suite hot buttons I mentioned at the start of this webinar, failure to attract, retain, and develop top talent, and addressing disruption, as well as the strategies to tackle both of them by building a culture of innovation, getting leaders engaged to engage their teams in idea sharing, and the importance of employee engagement. What's interesting to us is when we look across our client responses in terms of where projects are coming from and who is sponsoring the campaigns, 44% are coming from the innovation side of the business. However, what troubles us most is the fact that only 3% are coming from HR. So clearly there's a disconnect. Given what we're seeing in the marketplace as the hot button issues for executives and their strategies to address them, we believe there's an untapped opportunity for HR to get even more involved in leveraging our platform to engage their employees. An organization I was speaking with recently was looking to leverage our platform for an existing CTO-led initiative focused on product and services innovation. Now, employee engagement and innovation was underway, but within a small CTO group. And although engaging the broader employee base was important, they were focused on ROI numbers for their innovation program and not employee engagement metrics. So in the process of mapping out their program, results of the HR annual employee engagement survey were released, and the news wasn't good. The executive team was now faced with survey results that were lower than expected. And on top of it all, this is an employee-owned company. So it's especially critical that they have everyone pulling in the same direction. So these findings obviously required a shift. The CTO later told us that he thought they were going to deploy a technology innovation platform and program, but said, instead, we are now deploying an employee engagement program and platform. Our employees don't feel included in the strategy planning. They're craving transparency around how decisions are made, and they want to be involved and heard. We're going to do things differently to get better results. So now their single most important metric is to increase employee engagement, and HR is now partnered with the CTO in the program. Additionally, an existing client recently shared with us that they are finding that their employee engagement scores are dropping in line with their attention to their innovation program. So while engaging employees to solve an employee engagement survey issue is a starting point, we are encouraging HR and other leaders to proactively engage employees to help address company needs and strategies before you have a poor employee engagement survey results. Employee engagement is definitely a big ship to turn, and it's impossible to turn it just by measuring it. As you see here, according to Gallup, employee engagement is stagnant, despite measuring it for all these years and despite ongoing efforts to increase engagement. There's an opportunity to use crowdsourcing platforms and programs like Spigit to truly engage employees to help solve business challenges and opportunities which are tied to overall company strategy. And the latter is really important because it ties to an important driver of employee engagement, which is the ability to make progress on meaningful work. Crowdsourced innovation is a powerful format that employees love. It's a powerful format to drive employee engagement. It can foster employee engagement, align innovation with business strategy, and help build your customer relationships. It can help solve difficult issues, prevent new ones from occurring, and unearth new business opportunities. One of our clients, when recently asked how using Spigit had impacted the culture within the organization, told us, "What we are getting is a level of engagement and employee voice that was missing before. We're seeing a massive turnaround there, so much so that if it was the only benefit of using Spigit, it would justify doing what we're doing." Thank you so much for joining us today. And with that, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to my colleague, Kim.
Thank you, Virginia, for sharing the insights from the report this year. Wonderful presentation. A reminder to our audience, if you have a question, please enter it into the chat box, and we will work our way through the questions that have come in. The first question, Virginia, that has come up is, are there any noteworthy shifts that you have seen over the past year?
Great question. And yeah, as we shared here in our benchmark report, we are seeing companies run more challenges. There's more interest in running more challenges. I think if we go back again and align to what the C-suite survey said and the desire to engage employees, the subject as well of employee engagement is one that we are hearing more about and from with our clients. And not only in the past year, but I think really in the past number of months, for some of the reasons that we've discussed. They're finding that it's tied to, as one of our clients said, innovation efforts, and employees have a strong desire for their voices to be heard and be engaged. And so I'd say that's one of the key shifts, is the desire to engage employees. And then something we didn't talk about here but our survey results do show is companies are doing more external challenges. They're starting to want to leverage crowds outside of their company. Those crowds could be customers, they could be different business partners, they could be universities. We're seeing universities going external and reaching out to alumni. We're seeing companies want to go reach out to former employees. So we're seeing an uptick there. But I think overall, if we go back to those two key hot points in the C-suite survey, the shifts that we're seeing are supporting those two hot buttons.
Excellent, thank you so much. A follow-on question related to the gap that you raised around HR participation. To date, what role have you seen HR playing in innovation efforts?
We've often seen them play as a partner with others in the organization to help provide some guidance, but it's been largely around incentives. You know, one of the important components of a crowdsourcing program is rewards and incentives. And so we often encourage the business leaders who are sponsoring these challenges and starting a program to work closely with HR on that front. So we're seeing a lot of that. What we're not seeing a lot yet, but we do have pockets where HR is taking a leadership role in these programs, and we've had some new clients in particular come on board recently where that's very much the fact. But as our survey shows, we're not seeing enough of that, and this is obviously what we're advocating and supporting. And then we're seeing more, as in the example I gave, where there is strong partnerships forming. So you might have a CTO or another business leader being the sponsor for a challenge, but is bringing HR into the fold. And sometimes it's because, as I shared, this lack of employee engagement, where surveys are serendipitously coming out about the same time as the programs are being launched, or they're taking a more proactive approach. But it obviously needs to be more. So I think HR has been a little bit too much of a backseat, if I may. But there's an ample and wonderful opportunity here, as we've described, to have them take the front seat and take a more strategic role in leveraging the platform to affect those employee engagement numbers that we saw from Gallup, for example.
Absolutely. That brings to mind for me an example to the point that you made earlier in the webinar about one of the drivers of employee engagement being making progress on meaningful work. And so to me, there are a couple of examples. If we think about making progress or just the role of the day-to-day for any given employee in their level of engagement with an organization, so their connection to the organization and their willingness to kind of go the extra mile for the organization because they're so engaged. You think about that, the ability to make progress on a day-to-day basis. It makes me think of one of our clients running a challenge focused on what barriers can we eliminate or what bureaucracy can we remove from your day-to-day, and opening it up to all of the employees and learning about those things that are preventing the employees from making progress on a day-to-day basis, and then tackling those things and making that progress and communicating it in a transparent way, and really being able to essentially give the employees a voice and then show them that they're moving the needle. That's kind of the make progress side of it. The meaningful work side of it makes me think about some of our clients that are working on big executive-driven challenges that engage employees on the business strategy. So communicating what the business strategy is and then engaging the employees on activating that business strategy. So creating a conversation within the platform across the organization around that strategy and what ideas do the employees have to move that strategy forward. It's certainly a way to jumpstart that connection with between the employees and the company strategy, and doing so again in a transparent way, which is also that transparency from leadership is another important aspect of driving employee engagement.
Absolutely. And you raised two really important things there when you look at these programs overall. But the first around meaningful work, that's one of the reasons when clients ask us, what should be our first challenge, or where should we focus our first challenge or most of our challenges? And it's always around something that is of strategic importance to the organization, something that employees can, as I say, get their head and hearts around, right? Because to your point, being able to work on those kinds of challenges, those kinds of opportunities feed into the meaningful work, and they feel that they're doing something that's going to have a real impact on the organization. And then you spoke about transparency. That's really another important piece of what we're up to here, right? Is being able to communicate. And even in the example I shared with the CTO, that's one of the words he used, is there's a desire and a need from our employees for us to be more transparent. And part of that is not only allowing them and encouraging them to be part of these programs, but then also communicating back to them the results of what you've done with the feedback they've given and the winning ideas that you've selected, and ensuring that you are communicating back to them where these ideas stand in terms of their deployment, what kind of impact they're having. And then conversely, and equally importantly, if their idea wasn't selected, why not? And being able to communicate that back. All of that is really important to driving engagement and having success in the program.
Absolutely, absolutely. There haven't been any other questions coming in. Do you have any final comments before we wrap up, Virginia?
Just that we appreciate everybody who participated here today and joined us on the webinar. As I said, we believe that this is a really important and timely topic, and it's also a very exciting one, and I think one that is filled with opportunity, not only for HR leaders, but leaders in any organization. And we're happy to provide this information, and we're here to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And if we could go to the next slide, I just want to raise one last point, which is we're going to continue to explore this topic of the intersection between employee engagement and innovation, and how it's the imperative for business for ongoing success. And so on August 23rd, please plan to join us for a best practices for engaging employees webinar. And then following that on September the 27th, we'll be joined by Dan Beeler from Forrester, who will provide some guidance around overcoming innovation gaps and driving employee engagement. So please look out for those webinars as well. We really look forward to hosting you again and sharing this information. And thank you so much for joining us today.